So, Brandon to heckle.
To heckle.
Brandon Lee
To heckle.
to heckle.
That's the name.
Not the first to heckle we've had on here, actually.
Really? Wow.
Oh, someone else had a similar name.
No, heckle, Renee.
Oh!
That was crack up, eh? That was so fun.
Was that hecker?
No.
Hecker.
Holy hecker.
What
No.
the hecker?
What the heck?
Yeah, you're to heckle,
Yeah. Heckle.
which means in Māori means what?
I don't know. I do know, but I searched up my first name. My last name I didn't search up, but my first name was actually like a broom on the hill. So it was like a light on the hill. And then straight away, like God just hit me with Matthew 5:14.
Come on.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
You're a light on a hill.
Come on.
Is that what Brandon means?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You said broom on a hill.
Yeah, it says broom on the hill. And then I searched it up and it meant actual light on the hill. And I
You
was like-
cleaning,
Yeah.
sweeping the hill.
And then straight away I was like, oh, like what's the purpose of a light? And then the purpose of a light was to
show.
expose, to bring clarity. And it was even like a form of celebration as well. I
Nice.
was like, oh my gosh, come on. No wonder I'm so joyful all the time.
It's good. So, how's life right now? Like, what's life for you look like?
A simple life.
Simple life.
A simple life, just as Timothy's life was simple. No.
Good.
No, life for me is just pretty much, I work with kids with disabilities. So that came about during COVID, praise the Lord. That's been probably something that I do throughout most of the week. So that's pretty much my main income at the moment as a job. And on the side of that, I also do coaching throughout the week. And then on the side of that, I do my own training and stuff like that. So I still race BMX.
Cool. And you've, your training, how many hours a week personally do you train for BMX?
I'd probably say it could be from anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a week.
Training.
Just-
So every day something.
Yeah,
Apart
generally
from
every
a
day.
rest day, obviously.
Yeah, if I get a rest day, which
Okay.
is hardly ever now. But yeah, no, because races are slowly coming back
Yep.
due to COVID, kind of like, yeah, it kind of put BMX on pause for a long time. Because now that we've got racing starting to come up again, I did get like a reality check. I think this was like maybe 7 months ago. I kind of just tried to put my training in like as I was coaching and stuff like that and just allocate maybe like half an hour to an hour for training. And then I went to this race and I was just all over the shop. And then it was a massive reality check where I was like, oh man, like I really haven't been putting in the hard work.
Right.
So then straight away I kind of just quickly doubled the training I was doing. I feel like I'm at triple of that now. So just because the bigger races are coming up, and I've never been one to focus too much on smaller races, like if it's state titles, if it's a national round, or if it's international, that's the main races I focus on.
Right. So you've got a state title coming up?
Yes, I got a state title coming up pretty much next weekend. So I'm excited for that. I'm pumped, Like I feel like it's been so long since I've properly done a massive race. And then as we train, we can slowly get burnt out if there's actually nothing on. So I feel like I'm at that tip where I'm like, man, I've been training for a long time, but there's been no racing. So
you have to peak at the right point.
yeah, 100%. Like I felt like I probably peaked 2 weeks ago. So, but let's see if I can maintain that for just one more week.
That's cool. And then nationals are not far after that?
Yeah, so exciting. Originally, it was supposed to be in Western Australia. I hadn't even booked flights because I wasn't pretty much going to travel to that anyway because I just wanted to stay in Queensland. And then I found out last week that, national titles are held in Nerang in December.
Oh, yo.
So I was like, oh my gosh.
That's like you can walk to the trials, to the titles.
Yeah. I can crawl to the trials. Just in between my races, I'm just going to pop home for a shower,
Nice.
freshen up.
Nice.
So that's good.
That's
it's
good. So excited about that? You still love racing? You still love into it?
Yeah, I love racing. I think for me, the biggest thing was I used to, and this is actually a testimony in itself. Like I found that coming into this year, I was slowly approaching like what I felt like was retirement for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like, it was the end of my career. One of the biggest things to that was, I actually suffered like without anyone really knowing it, like real bad anxiety when I got to the track. Like it felt like I was just, crippled pretty much every time I went to the track.
Hands are sweaty.
hands are sweaty. Honestly, felt like I was getting choked.
Like spaghetti.
Yeah. So it was bad. And then I like came to a realization a few months ago, just reading this book that, once you're delivered from something, sometimes obviously you can go into those same atmospheres and pick it up a lot more. So I remember going to like my last race and I actually walked and I said, Lord, like how come I always feel this same crippling feeling every time I walk, like go to the track? Like I know a race is coming up. As soon as I get anywhere near the track, it's like, bam, I just get hit. And I was like, Lord, like how come this is always, and George will know this, like I just go weird. Something weird happens and I'm like just all of a sudden crippled. And I just got to the track and I said, Lord, like what's going on? And then as I was reading this book, it says, you've been delivered from this. So going into the atmosphere, you've got authority to block that stuff. So I remember going to the track and just started praying over the track, praying against all of that stuff. And it was actually my biggest breakthrough at the BMX track. And funny enough, I actually won that race, was able to minister to 2 people at the track. So I was just like, like I realized that time, God all along was just showing me,
come on,
to actually walk into that, step into that atmosphere and release joy, release,
awesome,
yeah.
Wow. Because that would be would have been the horrible thing about riding for you?
Yeah, like
you like the training, you like the racing, but actually that anxiety, that stress, that would just ruin it.
Yeah, it would just ruin it. Like, and like getting me to the track was the hardest thing. Training, like if it was a serious training session, it would be the same. And like I just was getting frustrated and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, how can I be like, I feel like I'm like one of the most confident people. But as soon as I step into this one environment, one atmosphere, I feel like a completely different person.
Wow. So since that revelation and walking in that, what's it been like?
Oh, it's been amazing. It's actually been so amazing.
How many races have you had?
Well, I haven't had any races, but I've had heaps of serious trainings and stuff like that. But I feel like, I just feel like God, after my eyes being open to that, I feel like, coming into the state titles by this point, I'll start feeling those little bit of, agitations. But I actually feel like, at the end of the day, it actually doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like, a day's done and then on to the next race we go. But like, imagine this, right? At this point, I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
And pretty much 16 years of my career, I've felt the same thing.
Wow.
And it's probably only ever gotten worse as I've continued to race.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, because the pressure's more.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, maybe the pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're an individual athlete, right?
Yeah.
You got no team.
Yeah, I've got no team, no one to blame. Rock up to the track if it doesn't work out. Can't blame anyone to the left or anyone to the right.
That's pretty polarizing though, right?
Oh, 100%, yeah. But at the same time, when you win, it's like, whoa, that feeling that lasts a day is like amazing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay, we got to go to the next race now.
Yeah. Wow. So it's still a treadmill in that sense too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But one thing I've learned throughout coaching is, I actually get more joy from watching my riders succeed.
Yeah.
More than I get out of myself succeeding. Like I remember watching one of my riders cross the line. And it's actually kind of cool in this facet because like the group I train is a lot more different to everyone else at BMX. The group's so like, there's so many biblical foundations to it. Like I just say, at the end of the day, we should be leaving the track happy, knowing that we've given that 100%.
Yeah.
And whether that looks like first, second, third, or even last,
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't actually matter.
No. Very few things, matter.
Yeah. And, to me, I could preach it, but I've got to practice that same thing as well. And at the end of the day, it brought me to a place where I'm like, one, I'm validated by God. And two, maybe my best isn't better than the person to the right, but that's okay because that's my best.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I felt like the pressure's definitely come off a lot this year.
But that you just can then relax in your performance because it is what it is, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It is what it is. You can't change it at that moment.
Yeah.
That's good.
But it's definitely exciting because I think, my walk and my journey with God, it just kind of opens my eyes up to, the grand scheme of things that, this little facet of my life that was such a big thing and was like a massive part of my identity. God really, you know, throughout the start of my journey with God, he really kind of stripped me back, and he was saying, you know, there's so much more. And like, this is kind of one of the revelations I've come to lately is, you know, the biggest calling on a person's life is just to be in fellowship with the Father.
Yeah.
Like, I'm even getting tingles over that now,
Yeah.
but you know, that's what we're actually called to be, in fellowship with the Father.
Doesn't really matter what you do.
No, not really.
BMX racing, coaching is just a vehicle to share God's love, right?
Yeah, 100%.
If you're a cleaner, an upholsterer, carpenter, CEO, doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just a vehicle to be a light on the hill, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I've loved it. Like, I've seen like a lot of BMXers come to the Lord.
Yeah.
And they're just slowly walking out their journey. But it's just so exciting to see, you know, like what I thought was just specifically my career, and then turned into a place where I was like, oh, I'm done with this. I just want to go, you know, full hard for the Lord. But that was actually a part of the journey anyway, and it still is. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, you've taken something I love and you're actually using that to love other people. And I'm just so thankful waking up every morning knowing that, you know, I'm going to coaching and I'm like, man, like what I do today makes a difference.
It does. This is full-time ministry, right?
Yeah, 100%. And for me, like, honestly, this was my biggest thing. Like, as soon as I walked into chapel when I first got saved, I was like, oh man, I'd love to be a pastor. You know, that was my biggest thing. I was like, this is sick.
Well, you're doing it.
But like, I was like, oh man, like, and at that point, being a young Christian, like, I thought pastoring was actually just preaching.
Yeah,
but then as I was, well, you're a good example of that. You know, that's only like probably 1/3, maybe even 1/8 of what actually goes into pastoring.
Yeah.
And then as I began to, you know, just journey with God, I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, there's pastoring, there's so many facets of God. And I was just like, as I began to step into BMX and use that as the vehicle, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like, it's awesome. Like,
shifted your focus.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's the BMX culture like generally from your 16 years of doing it full time, like handy?
Yeah.
What's the culture generally like?
It's definitely competitive like most sports. I think because it is an individual sport, it's kind of like, and this is one of the biblical foundations that I really had to be stripped back and then really built up on was, you know, like a lot of people kind of crawl up each other, pulling each other down to get to the top.
Okay.
Whereas, you know, God's saying actually come under each other and exalt each other and push each other higher. And that was one of my biggest things because I was like, you know, how can I walk? Like, I'll give an example, right? So this is like being an athlete, you have to be selfish. You have to focus on yourself. So there's a lot of self-focus, a lot of self-work. There's like a lot that goes into it. And it's almost like you're numbing yourself really. Like you're not actually improving. You're actually just numbing yourself and putting stuff under the carpet. But as I was in China one year, I remember one of the athletes was cramping from Australia. And then he was pretty much like, oh man, I need some hydrolytes. Like I need some electrolytes, hydrolytes. Just does anyone have any? And then a BMX mentality is like, you know, hell no, I'm not giving it to you because at the end of the day, I've got to race you.
Hopefully you cramp when I'm racing you.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my initial thoughts.
Yeah, of course. One less competitor.
100%. But then, you know, at that point I was saved and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got extra stuff, you know, like, so I ended up giving it to him anyway and he bet me at the end of the day and I was salty. But like, you know, that's the kind of mentality that happens is, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, hell no, I'm not helping you. But can you help me? You know, like.
I remember speaking to a national athlete in America who's represented America in running. Yeah. And he said he's a believer. And he always had the mindset of like what you said of coming under to serve them. Yeah. So before a race, and this was from his heart, he would always say, thank you for bringing the best out of me today. Wow. Before they even started. Wow. Thank you for being here today because you're going to bring the best out of me. Thank you for being here today because you're going to make me run my best. I was just like, wow, that's really an awesome attitude. Like
100%. I remember you actually sending that to me.
Did I say that?
Yeah. On Instagram, you sent that to me.
I did.
And you know what's funny with that is George has seen me multiple times. Like a lot of people, like good racers will win and I'll be like, go over, shake their hand and say, man, that was an awesome race. Congratulations on this. And half the time they stop and they go, "What the heck is this guy's a weirdo?" You know, like, and I'm congratulating him, like, and they're just like, I'm just like, man, that's awesome.
It is, but it is though.
Yeah, 100%.
Like it is awesome.
Yeah,
because they are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really big shift then.
Yeah.
So you're actually going there, thankful.
Yeah.
For those who are racing against you.
Oh, 100%. And even like a small part of my testimony was in 2016. I was looking back at the dates today. I actually broke my elbow. And so what happened in that process of breaking it is I didn't know it was broken. I was like getting I think she was like the American physio. And she was like rubbing my elbow, checking it. And then we're like 100% convinced at this race that it wasn't broken. So anyway, at the time I was staying in America and I went back to where we were staying. I think it was in California somewhere. And then I was preparing for one of the biggest races of the year. And then, because I was like, man, this must be a tight muscle or something. Like it's really sore. So I remember in the spa, you know those metal poles they have in you walk? Yeah. I was full like diving my elbow into that pole going, man, there's a tight muscle in there. And then I find out like 2 weeks later that it's actually broken. I potentially won't be able to race that race. So I was out there anyway. They put me in a sling. I don't know why. But at that point, my elbow could bend fully. And then they put me in a sling for like 2 weeks. After that, my elbow was actually like bad. I could barely straighten my arm. And then I pretty much stayed in America, still raced that race, done really well. Came back to Australia. And for 6 months, I couldn't touch my bike. Because my elbow was just so bad. And at that point, I was in the Victorian Institute of Sport. So I had the best people looking at me and just trying to get me to get back on the bike. And it took like 6 to 12 months before I could properly touch my bike. Yeah, in 2016. And like, you know,
that's not that long ago, really.
No, 100%. And as coming into those adult ages, I was like, my whole life I've done BMX. So I was really, really lost at that time because I was potentially having to have to actually quit. So then I like was just like, man, like my life is a mess. Like as good as it looks.
You're thinking that anyway.
I was thinking that anyway. And I was like, man, my life's a mess. Like, what am I going to do? So coming into 2017, I was just like, I still couldn't touch my bike. Coming into 2018, I was like, I'm just going to put my head down and train. And then anyway, it slowly started coming right. Like this is probably 1/3 of the performance I could actually do properly. And then I raced the nationals, ended up winning. And then slowly like ended up on overseas for like 3 months. And then my elbow just blew up as soon as I went overseas. And I was just like, man, like what am I actually going to do? So I came home. My elbow was really, really bad. And then I got invited on the Australian Institute of Sports study, seeing if we can actually improve our gait times. And then straight away I was like, oh, okay, yep. So then that's how I ended up in the Gold Coast because I'm from Victoria. And then during that study and that time staying in Miami, like Craig and Kiriana, they were just sewing into me and, you know, asking me if I want to come to church. And that's a massive story in itself. But I remember the first time I came to chapel and then pretty much I actually ended up at the altar like 3 times. Honestly, so my encounter with God was insane because I was so lost. But I remember just at the back and everyone was worshipping. I had no grid on church. Like, didn't grow up really believing in God.
So you'd been to church before?
Never.
Like funeral? Never. Or was that
I've been to a funeral.
At a church or? Oh, that was like a little house thing. No, building.
It was in the par, what we call the par.
Oh, yeah. On a marae.
Yeah, in the marae.
So, okay, so funeral. Weddings? Oh, you've been to church?
I went to one wedding, but it was like a Italian wedding. Oh, it was different.
Okay, so church was like
not even on the Richter scale. However,
on the Richter scale,
it was nowhere even on that Richter scale. It was, you know, like honestly, like if I think about the life I'm living now, I never ever thought this would have been available.
Okay, so when they said, hey, why don't you come to church? What's in your head?
Right. So this is how they convinced me as well. So anyway, I did race that day in the rain, done really, really well. So at that point, I'm in a really good mood as well. And I want to tell people about it, you know, like, so Anyway, they said, hey, this is the last time you're going to see your uncle. So my uncle was here at the time. If you want to see your
Uncle Henry.
Yeah, Uncle Henry.
Yo.
So they're like, if you want to see Uncle Henry for the last time, why don't you come to church so that you can say goodbye? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's like I probably should. And at that point, I was with all the BMXers. And I said, guys, I'm going to catch up with you guys later for dinner. And they're like, oh, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to church. And, they were looking at me and going, oh, you're like Satan himself, Like, because I was really, really bad, and really, really bad. And they're like, how could you, out of everyone, you're probably the last one in this room that should be going to church, So anyway, I remember just going there, and at that point, I was actually confident in going because the night before I'd pretty much met everyone from chapel because I was having dinner with Craig and Kiriana. And I just remember as we're having dinner, there was a whole bunch of guys that walked over. They were well-dressed, and I was like, man, something so different about them. I think one of the first couple of people I saw was actually Mikey and Malachi. And I was like, fuck, these guys are having some fun, you know what I mean? And then at that point, I'd come from Melbourne, and I'm like, I'm over that alcohol, partying, that friend vibe. I was just over it. I was just like, man, I need to focus because my elbow was, kind of getting better. Yeah. So anyway, I remember recognizing something so different about them. And later that night they said, oh, hey, do you guys want to come to Couch? And then they were dressed nice. And I was like, oh my gosh, Couch coming from Melbourne, that sounds like a club. And I'm like, not interested, I'm like, man, I've already moved past that. And they were like, no, just come along. So then anyway, we went downstairs at Pack Fair. And then I was looking in this ice cream shop, and there was 20 young guys having fun. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's no alcohol. How are these guys having so much fun? And straight away, one of my favorite movies, Footloose. I just love that energy and that vibe. And I was like, man, this is legit it without alcohol. And suddenly, in my heart, I felt like I was fulfilled. I felt this is where I have to be. This is the joy that I've been looking for and searching for my whole life. And then straight away that Sunday after I had been asked, I was like, man, maybe I might, this was in the back of my head, maybe I might see them again. And then I remember that day that this was the second service of that day. I was like, oh, maybe they went to the first, they won't be at the second. And then I got to the second, yo, what's up? And then it was amazing. And then worship started. So coming into this kind of church vibe, I was like, what? I just went for the people.
No idea.
No idea. So anyway, I was at the back, and then all of a sudden everyone started singing. And I was like, and I love music anyway. And it sounded great. And they were singing Build My Life. And I was like, fuck, this sounds pretty good, but this is weird. So I was just standing, and my eyes were peeled. I was looking left and right. And I was like, why is their hands up? What are they doing? I was so confused. And then I just remember it was like God was just drumming that song in my head. I felt like it honestly repeated for 40 minutes. And then I just said, I want to sing. I want to go for this. I don't know what it is. I closed my eyes, and I kid you not, I saw red eyes look at me. And straight away, I was so scared. I had to open my eyes. And then as I was looking around again, I was like, this is pretty scary. And then suddenly, something within me said, this is a safe place.
Wow.
And then straight away, I just closed my eyes and I just started singing. Oh, and then I just felt God just hit me with the just peace and just joy. And it just I felt literally my cup was overflowing.
Wow.
And something I'd been searching for so long, a place in my heart. I always felt like there was a hole in my heart. I was doing things in the world and it was just getting empty.
So it was you recognize this as I know this, but I've never experienced it before, type thing?
Yeah, because everything that I was doing in the world was a counterfeit and was so temporal that maybe it might last for a day, and then I'll dive deeper into it, and then it'll last for half a day, and then I just kept getting emptied and emptied and emptied, and then suddenly this thing hit me, and I instantly knew that I was actually, my heart was properly filled.
Wow.
And from that day, I've never, ever lost that feeling ever.
No.
And then I straight away was like, man, for my whole life, I've been praying in New Zealand, in Māori, didn't know what I was praying. And suddenly I knew that when I pray, I know who I'm praying to. And I just felt connected to God.
So church was never on your radar?
No.
But sort of a religious Māori prayer.
Yeah, 100% religious.
Just repetition.
Yeah.
Just words.
Yeah, I know it off by heart.
Yeah. But there was no life to it, right?
Nah, no life at all.
Wow.
Nah.
And then so prayer. So what was God before?
And this is crazy.
Then?
God was not even in the Richter scale.
Like you didn't even comprehend.
No, so I understand when, when I'm walking around in the world and people don't even have a grid or have even a thought. Like
Nothing.
there's not, honestly, I lived in the world for 20 years.
Yeah.
And there was never ever a thought. There was a thought of life and is there more to life?
But that would be fleeting because you'd be scared, right?
Always.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, there was no one to talk about it too.
Right, okay.
And even if I did, they were on the same page as I was.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
So there was never a moment in time where I actually came to a place where I came to a place where I was like, is there more to life than what the life I was living in the world? But there was never a question about God.
So then, okay, you have this encounter. You're like, wow. You know when you said before you couldn't even pick up your bike for nearly a year?
Yeah.
What did you start picking up instead?
So I kind of just started diving around the world, doing what I did best. And I was just kind of like, girls were in the page, parties, friends, alcohol, like you name it, whatever's in the world, you name it, I was in that.
So because the bike, you couldn't pick that up because of your injury, you just went ham picking everything else up.
100%, because I kind of at that point, I dived into a lot of stuff, but I was very limited to what I could dive into because of, the time frame I had of freedom off the bike.
Yeah.
So maybe if I was to go out with the boys, like I know the next day I'm training.
Right.
So it was very limited to how far I was diving into stuff.
Right.
However, when I had that time off the bike, it was just like, going ham on everything because it was like, man, I have no purpose in life anymore. Like I'd actually lost the purpose of life.
So this little Institute of Sport study thing was actually a bit of a godsend for you.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And then you met Craig Kiriana, Uncle Henry, Afi and Chris you stayed with. Yeah. And then you encountered God.
Yeah, and it was such a wrestle because, I haven't told a few people about this, but what happened was the week leading into going to church and encountering God, in my head, I'd heard, don't go to church, don't go to church. Yeah, in the back of my head. And I'd never really even focused on it because it was something that was just so foreign. But I heard a whisper in my head go, don't go to church. And at that time, there was a lot of wrestles because, one, I never ever hung out with Kiri and Craig. I was always with Arfino when I was in. So that was the first ever time I'd kind of caught up with them. Right. And then even throughout that week, there was a lot of wrestling because, there was just heaps of wrestling with me.
Internally,
yeah.
And you wouldn't know what that wrestle means, what it means, right?
No, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I got saved and I outworked it backwards, I was like, thankful.
Yeah. Wow. And so, but even, when you're saying you've been delivered in relation to that anxiety and that pre-race stress, how long into your walk was that?
Oh, that was pretty much tipping on 3 years.
Into your walk before that?
Into my walk, yeah.
Wow. So things take time.
Yeah, however, there was an element in the first 6 months where it was completely different. Every time I raced, I felt, and this is 100% weird, but every time I felt like when I was about to come into the finals, I felt this overwhelming presence come on me, and I won every single race I was entering in. And I felt like every time I finished a race, my legs would be so blown out, I'd be done for 2 days. And I knew it was just, I felt like that was the Lord actually flowing through me like crazy. Right. But after that 6 month point, it was a completely different change. It went from that to completely refining me and purifying me back and going, man, BMX isn't everything. BMX isn't your identity. BMX is a gift and something that you're really good at.
You worked hard for.
Yeah, 100%. But there was so much shifting within that as well, and going, there's so much more to BMX than just racing.
So was there a tension, like a tension of, man, I've lost my fire to win because I've won.
Yeah.
But therefore I must give it up?
Yeah, so I wrestled with the fact that because I was racing my whole life to be validated, all of a sudden I'm validated by God, and I knew I was. So I was under the question, why would I ever want to race again?
Well, that's true, but it's a vehicle, right? It's
100%. And then
God doesn't care about whether you win or he doesn't really care. But he can use what you've cut your teeth on.
Yeah, 100%. And it took me a while to understand that because
I think people would struggle with that. I think a lot of people would struggle with that.
I've seen a lot of people, quit sports because of it. But then when I came to the realization I was like, okay, I'm validated at this point.
Yeah.
I'm in sports. Yep. Why would I be still in sports? And then I realized that I was like, man, I've, like you said, put so many hours and stuff like that. But I think at that point I was still focused on myself, that I wasn't seeing the opposite way, and I wasn't seeing how much I could actually make an impact on people around me.
So you can redeem your purpose, right?
100%.
Even though the devil would say, want you to be so ingrained in this that it will destroy your life, which you were on track to do.
Yeah.
You redeemed it so that your purpose, you find God's purpose in it.
Yeah.
Because if you left that, what would you do?
Nothing. Honestly. And so it took me a long time to understand it. And because I'm such an internal thinker, a short time is a long time. Yeah. So I wrestled with that for a long time, and then all that happened was as I started to coach, and then I allowed that coaching to actually and this took a little bit of purifying and refining as well, was because one, if I'm going to the track and I'm going to a race, my biggest idea of that is actually just going there and focusing on myself. Whereas I remember God started to shift that mindset and say, hey, look, buddy, you've still got some riders that you're coaching. So, and then because that started off small, I allowed time for it. And then as it began to grow, and then I was allowing more time, I started to realize that I wasn't actually putting a lot of time or focus into myself at those races. Yeah. Which is, which could be seen as bad. But actually internally I was getting filled because I was like, man, this is so awesome. I'm actually helping here. I'm still performing. And essentially it didn't make a difference whether I was helping someone or not. Yeah. If anything, I was doing better because I was taking my eyes so much more off me and putting them on others that I actually felt relaxed at racing. And I was like, man, I've done my job here. Now I'm just going to, do the rest of it. So
wow, that's awesome. So you feel like you've moved through that. So you got a fresh sense of purpose with your racing and stuff.
Yeah. And
you're gonna go for it for the glory of God, right?
Yeah, 100%. And it looks so different because at the end of the day, I'm not really there for myself. I could give BMX up and 100% be okay with that. Yeah. But why would I?
Why?
Yeah, 100%.
There's no need.
No, not at all.
It'd be like any competitor that got saved. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. 100%.
Any elite athlete that got saved would be like, oh, I have to give this up now because I'm competitive. Yeah. And there's no competition in the kingdom of God.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest wrestles was me as well, because BMX was so a part of my life before God. There was so much attachments to that. Yeah. So it was really hard when I found God to still, all my attachments fell off because I got saved in July 2018. And then I actually had to go back to Victoria because that's where I was living at the time. Yep. So July had passed, August had come, and I was like, I know I need to be in the Gold Coast. So suddenly August, I'm actually planning quitting my full-time job that I had. I'm quitting, the VIS because I wasn't quitting, but I was actually having to move. So everything that benefited me. There was a lot of things that were benefiting me in Melbourne because I had established a life there. But suddenly, you know, August came and I was like, man, my life has to change. And I'm like all in or nothing. So I'm like, it's going to change now. So within the month I planned to move in September. So by September, I'd already packed up my life and moved to Gold Coast. So suddenly there was a lot of stripping away from virtually everything except for BMX.
Yeah.
So when I came to that, it was a really big struggle because I was like, what, you know, it says we go from the old into the new, like, where is the new part of BMX? So that took it took a long time. Yeah. But then I'm starting to see, you know, there's the newness in BMX, you know.
Well, that's because you're new.
Yeah.
BMX 100%. Is still the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But you're new.
Yeah.
So you're bringing
the newness.
The newness.
The refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the the culture's quite toxic.
Yeah.
What being how you are now?
Yeah.
What's it like when you see it?
Like compared to before?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it feels so different. Like it does.
So you don't care what people say about you or anything like that now?
No, not really.
Did you before? Not really.
Not really, but no, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I did to a certain extent, and with this comes like, you know, when I first got saved, I felt like the Lord was saying, well, in the scripture it says, you know, bad company corrupts good character. So as I got saved,
so your relationships totally changed.
They severed. Like they couldn't stand because, you know, I didn't know what conviction was. Yeah. I didn't know right from wrong.
You didn't have any.
Well, I didn't have the Holy Spirit to convict me. So I didn't know right from wrong. But, you know, as I began to read the Bible and the Holy Spirit began to, you know, convict me of things, I was like, how could I stay in the same group?
Yeah.
In BMX. So there was a time of isolation for me where God said, you know, I can't have you in those groups because they'll corrupt you. And then so it went from, you know, hanging outside of BMX, that died off. Right. So hanging inside of BMX, but there was still trouble there, what I felt like I was wrestling with. So then suddenly those things just completely severed. However, like there was a respect from the BMXers where they kind of just let me slip away.
Right.
Because they knew the life I was living was a lot different.
So PBs? You had some PBs lately?
Lately, yeah, 100%. So everything's been going good in the gym and stuff like that. I feel like I'm slowly getting... not slowly. It just kind of happened the last 3 months in the gym, just been getting super strong. On the bike, I feel like I'm getting really, really good. So I've been putting in a lot of work, a lot of effort. And just being a coach, you learn a lot of different things that you can apply to your own coaching as well. Yeah. So it's been a great little lesson for me. And like same again, like a lot of my training sessions are alone. Yeah. So the only times I'll actually be in group training sessions is when they've got like an open night or stuff like that. But because I'm working late most nights, I have to pretty much train by myself. Yeah. But like I enjoy it.
So okay, young people that want to be elite athletes. Yeah. Takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, a lot of focus, a lot of letdowns, disappointments. Yeah. And trying to stay with the Lord. I mean, it must be the other way around. If you're brought up in the church and competitive, you can see the pull of the world as well. What sort of advice would you give to young people that love sport, love being elite, you know?
Yeah, I'd definitely say, I think for me the biggest thing is continuing to check in with myself and continue to check, am I doing this out of a place of, validation? Right.
So when you mean validation, you mean like because I did well at a race, I am valid. Yeah. I am good. Yeah. Okay, that's quite significant then.
Yeah, 100%, because I think once you start diving into that area, you lose the identity of who you actually are, and then you become, this sports.
Is that a subtle thing, do you think?
Oh, that's very subtle.
Okay.
It comes in very subtle, yeah.
Okay. So a young person competing,
yeah,
you're saying be careful of this.
Yeah, because it's, yeah. So I'd say sports is a good thing.
Yeah.
But then when you start going into it and spending a lot more time, it's easy to be drifted away. And I'd say the biggest thing for me as well is, I'd say, at the end of the day, it is a sport. It's not everything. And for me, sports can quickly become completely everything. Yeah. And then it's just pretty much like if I was to, go full on hard, like I'm going full on hard at the moment, but like if I was to put that at the forefront and prioritize that, like that's not my priority at the moment.
Right.
But if I was to prioritize that over everything, then it would easily become my everything.
Very good point. It's like training for an Ironman, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just do dabble on the side.
No.
It's all in.
It's hard. Sports is hard.
It's hard.
And
it is very self-centered.
It is.
Self-absorbed.
Yeah.
Because it's all about you, right?
Yeah.
Everything fits around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's a big...
And that's always been my wrestle with sports.
Yeah.
However, because in terms of what I'm doing now, because it's focused on others, it's easy.
Yep.
However, I know with that comes a sacrifice as well. Like for me personally, I know that I couldn't just randomly go to the Olympics. Like I wouldn't be able to properly qualify myself for the Olympics with the same mentality.
Right.
I'd have to completely sever that side of things because it just wouldn't work because of the time, the effort. And that's something that I've just come to the conclusion of because, at the end of the day, what I'm doing now will be more valuable than, putting myself first and putting myself before everything. But that's something I wrestled with and something that I'm rested, I'm in peace, and I'm thankful for what I'm doing now. That means more than an Olympic gold medal around my neck.
Yeah. Yeah, because I suppose an Olympic medal, you'd still wake up the next day
and say, where's the next medal?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always another race.
Where does it stop?
Yeah, it doesn't.
No.
And that's the thing about sports is it never stops. Like one.
So you would say that that can be the case with anything, though.
Oh, anything, any good thing.
Anything.
It's good things as well. Like
so, business.
Yeah, business can become
music,
an idol real quick.
Yeah, if you're a talented musician or a singer,
100%.
Or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can become an idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about finding that balance as well. Like this is to put it in more perspective. When I first got saved and I came into chapel, and then like months in when I started to serve in youth, for me the biggest thing was I had to stay off my legs to keep them fresh for training. So with youth, you know how active they are, and there's always games and stuff like that. I would struggle and wrestle and say in my head, why am I going there? Because if I go there to help, I'm not going to be able to train 100% the next day. And it wasn't a lie. It was true because like I'd go to youth, and because of my personality, I want to join in the games as well. So I end up even more tired. But even if I didn't, like there was always that wrestle.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was the first time I felt a tug, and I was like, at the end of the day, this isn't about you. And the more I began to do, stuff for other people, the more I realized, wow, there's so much more fulfillment in helping others than helping yourselves.
It's true.
So.
Wow. That's really cool. And then you happen to fall in love with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, my amazing wife, Georgia.
God blesses you.
Oh, man. I actually looked at the dates. It was that same year we started dating.
Are you kidding me?
2018. Yeah, wow. December 2018.
It wasn't, when you first came to chapel, you didn't notice her, eh?
No, so...
Yeah, good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, so, but this is the funny wrestle was when I first came into chapel, that first night, I can't remember who it was saying, but I think it was Rochelle was saying, oh, he couldn't stop looking at you, Georgia. But like, honestly...
I would have noticed that.
I was like tears like flowing. Like I almost created a river around me. How much I was crying. I didn't see nothing.
I think Rochelle got mixed up on the date. I don't think it was that first time either.
Yeah,
that first week.
Yeah, so I remember
maybe the second or third.
Maybe the second I was like, oh wow. But at that point as well, you know, because I was still like coming into church, and I was like, man, I need to strip everything.
Yeah.
That was like a phase where I was like going, man, I need to like just focus on you, God. And I love that. I love how Georgia came about, how our relationship came about. I wasn't looking for anyone. She wasn't looking for anyone. Yeah. I was just purely focused on the Lord, and that came about. So I actually really, really love that. How did it come about? The Lord? Nah. Answered prayers? Nah.
Craig.
It just came about, like, so.
Yeah, but who said what first?
She asked me out. Nah. Alright, so I started the conversation, and then she just went with it, and then it ended up just coming up.
Hey, it's not your thing, right?
Yeah, you're not in the podcast.
Yeah.
But how it actually started was it started with a follow. So she followed me on Instagram. And then I was like, oh, okay. So then I looked at her Instagram and I was like, oh, she likes editing. I like editing too. Oh, she likes God. I like God too. So there was just so many lines getting drawn. And I was like, man, this has to be God.
Well, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And very thankful. Yeah. And love you sharing on Testify. It's amazing, man. It's a great... And next time will be, another aspect. And,
100%.
This God's so good and constantly changing us.
Yeah.
So, proud of you. Think you're awesome.
Thank you.
Love you heaps. And you're a good man. Brandon, broom on a hill.
Te heko.
Te heko.
Heka.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.